Hello everyone and welcome back to another Attic Show without tacos. And I say without tacos because that's an anagram for Attic Show. And personally, I think coming up with anagrams is a fun way to pass time during a pandemic. Denim cap, which is a good one because maybe the only thing worse than wearing a denim cap is going through a pandemic. See? Aren't anagrams more fun than baking a loaf of sourdough or noonday rye, which is an anagram for Andy Rooney, who I realize I'm starting to sound like. Have you ever noticed how anagrams are just the same letters in a different order? But look, I'm not here to talk about Portland mud. I'm here to talk about Donald Trump because the president and his political allies are once again trying to subvert the 2020 election, sue it the 2020 convertible, by using the levers of power to target political opponents and disrupt the voting process itself. For more on this, it's time for a closer look. Donald Trump is a deranged man. We've been over this. You guys know the deal. If this show was a book, that would be the subtitle. His brain is likely the gelatinous texture and consistency of pumpkin pie filling, and there's no way to treat a brain ailment like that, though I guess we're gonna find out if hydroxychloroquine helps. Trump is a deeply paranoid guy who sees enemies and shadowy plots everywhere he looks, and he encourages others to see those same conspiracies. On Tuesday, for example, he met with farmers and told a potato farmer from Virginia that the state government was somehow trying to take away the Second Amendment.
We're going after Virginia with your crazy governor. We're going after Virginia. They want to take your Second Amendment away. You know that, right? You'll have nobody guarding your potatoes.
Oh, I've been in quarantine for 2 months with 2 kids, and I still haven't said anything that crazy. You know, that farmer was like, oh, damn, am I supposed to be guarding my potatoes right now? You know what's guarding your potatoes? The fact that they cost about 12 cents a pound and grow underground. Of course, Trump probably thinks potatoes grow in bags on supermarket shelves. I'm just kidding. He's never been to a supermarket. But that's how Trump's mind works. He sees deranged conspiracies everywhere. Take voting. We like to think of it as perhaps the single most sacred principle underpinning our democracy. Voting is a universal right, not a privilege. Even the Republican Party, which has for decades committed itself to suppressing the votes of marginalized people through voter ID laws and gerrymandering, knows enough to at least pay lip service to that idea. But on Wednesday, as is his wont, Trump just blurted out the truth during an incoherent rant on mail-in voting. He sees voting as an honor, not a right.
I think just common sense would tell you that it's massive manipulation can take place. Massive. And you have cases of fraudulent ballots where they actually print them and they give them to people to sign. Maybe the same person signs them with different writing, different pens. I don't know. There's a lot of things can happen. No, if you can, you should go and vote. Voting is an honor. It shouldn't be something where they send you a pile of stuff and you send it back.
They send you a pile of stuff and you send it back. That's mail. That's how the mail works. And then you go to a restaurant, say chicken to a stranger who you've never met. And the next thing you know, they bring it to her in a plate. It makes no sense. You know, voter fraud is virtually non-existent in this country. The most famous recent example was a voter fraud scheme concocted by a Republican to cheat in a congressional election in North Carolina in 2018, which invalidated the election and resulted in a redo. Now, you might be wondering, if Democratic voter fraud is supposedly so widespread, as Republicans claim, why do we only know about voter fraud cases involving Republicans? MSNBC asked the then executive director of the North Carolina GOP that question, and he did not have a particularly good answer.
We constantly are hearing Republicans say that Democrats are engaged in voter fraud. There's almost never any evidence of that. And right here, you're holding a board that has at least 22 cases of voter fraud in the state of North Carolina,
in one
executed
district.
by Republicans in one district.
In one congressional district, in one election.
So 22 cases of voter fraud by a Republican. Where are the Democratic cases of voter fraud?
Well, I'm not keeping score of that.
Well, look like you caught me with my britches down, but as you have insulted my honor, I have no recourse but to challenge you to a duel tomorrow morning in the potato field. And yet, yesterday, Trump threatened on Twitter to unilaterally withhold funding from the states of Michigan and Nevada simply for mailing out applications for absentee ballots, which is perfectly legal, and which states with Democratic and Republican governors have done for years. Just 5 months after he got impeached for threatening to withhold funding from Ukraine unless they interfered in the election, and 2 months after he said governors who want help from the federal government have to treat him well, he just keeps using the same move over and over. It's only a matter of time before he threatens to withhold funding from the post office unless they promise to look at every ballot and dump the ones marked for Biden in the shredder he uses for his tax returns. It comes with an extra large bin. And the Republican Party is fully in lockstep behind Trump. In the middle of a pandemic that has killed more than 90,000 Americans and created the economy. They're transforming the Senate into an arm of the president's campaign. The Senate Judiciary Committee, led by Lindsey Graham, is moving forward with an investigation of the origins of the Russia probe in an effort to target Obama administration officials. And the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee, led by Ron Johnson, voted to subpoena documents as part of an investigation of Hunter Biden. The same investigation Trump got impeached for, and Republicans are fine with all of it. You might get a little grumble, from Mitt Romney, and Susan Collins might form a committee to look into the possibility of furrowing her brow, but otherwise the GOP is down with all of it. They're like bank robbers who get caught planning a heist and then say, should we do it anyway? Republicans are just as paranoid and conspiratorial as Trump. He didn't come out of nowhere. He fits perfectly in the GOP. They've concocted an insane fantasy in which Obama spied on Trump by secretly monitoring suspicious calls by Michael Flynn and not telling Trump about it, as Johnson claimed Tuesday on Fox News.
So if that were the case, that they were genuinely concerned that there was some compromise or something going on that was nefarious on those phone calls, why would they have not told the incoming president of the United States?
Because there's a corrupt transition process. No, that's exactly what they should have done.
They did. This isn't some secret. Obama warned then President-elect Trump about Flynn during a meeting in the Oval Office 2 days after the election. I mean, do you remember that incredibly bizarre meeting where Trump sat stone-faced next to Obama like a terrified seventh grader who just got called into the principal's office? These guys have concocted a bunch of insane conspiracy theories, and now they're using the levers of government to suppress votes and drum up politically motivated investigation, and they're doing that because they're losing. Polls show Americans broadly dissatisfied with Trump's handling of the pandemic, and Biden consistently ahead of Trump. And when a Democrat is ahead of Trump in the polls, it's all over, baby. Oh. Right. The president has badly mishandled a massive cataclysm that has left nearly 100,000 Americans dead and the economy in tatters. Yet on Wednesday, he insisted he'd actually handled the situation perfectly.
Mr. President, with 4% of the world's population and 30% of the outbreak, what would you have done differently facing this crisis?
Well, nothing.
Are you sure? You don't want to think about it for maybe another second? You don't think you would have changed anything? Maybe? You shouldn't have said coronavirus would disappear like a miracle, that it was like the flu, or that you could cure it by chomping Tide to-go sticks and shining a heat lamp up your ass? Okay. In reality, of course, there are lots of things we could have been doing and should be doing now to suppress the outbreak. New data reported by the New York Times last night suggested that lockdown delays cost at least 36,000 lives. Instead, Trump has been obsessed with pushing hydroxychloroquine as an unproven miracle cure, despite the fact that his own FDA warns against taking it. And now, after claiming out of nowhere that he himself was taking hydroxychloroquine, Trump announced on Wednesday that he was about to stop.
Come on, let's go. We're finished. Come on, let's go. Come on, we finished. We're done.
I think the regimen finishes in a day or two. Yeah. I think it's 2 days.
So Trump took an unproven drug for no reason and decided arbitrarily that the regimen finishes in a day or two. Yeah, I only have 2 days left because last I checked, there were just the 2 pills left in the dispenser. You better not be holding out on me, Mickey. The president is pushing dangerous miracle cures when there are actually lots of things like testing, contact tracing, and isolation we could be doing to save lives. In fact, this week has provided a fairly stark contrast between things that do work and things that don't work in combating the coronavirus pandemic, and which of those Trump has chosen to embrace. For example, it was reported this week that experiments by a team in Hong Kong found that the coronavirus transmission rate via respiratory droplets or airborne particles dropped by as much as 75% when surgical masks were used. Now, that's potentially huge news. However, there is one big caveat to this story. The study used hamsters in 2 cages, one group of hamsters infected with COVID-19 and the other healthy. Now, if you're wondering how one group of hamsters got infected, they were the hamsters who violated stay-at-home orders to get haircuts. You guys want to know something fun? You see whatever that picture is? I haven't seen it yet. You're seeing it before I do. We just write hamster with a super styled haircut, and then a member of our incredible graphics team working from their apartment makes it, and then I pretend to look at it like this, and I'm like, but I'm just staring at the ceiling of my attic. I miss being at work, guys. I'm over this reacquainting funk. Also, the study just used mask barriers in the cages. They didn't actually make the hamsters wear masks, but I really wish they had, because that would mean, it was actually someone's job to make tiny hamster-sized face masks. And then from that, we could extrapolate that they also make hamster-sized accessories like gloves, briefcases, tank tops, baseball helmets, and of course, tiny cages for the pet hamsters, tiny pet hamsters. Again, I have no idea what any of those graphics are going to look like, but I assume they're fun. I hope you enjoyed them. So this finding is obviously preliminary and has some caveats, but it's consistent with what we know about countries that have adopted widespread mask wearing, along with other techniques like contact tracing. By and large, they've had a lot more success containing the pandemic than we have. Widespread mask wearing, along with testing, contact tracing, and isolation, is one of a few simple measures that could very possibly help us get back to some semblance of normalcy, and yet conservatives have decided to turn it into yet another dumb culture war issue. Some have even theorized that it's a media conspiracy to keep people permanently afraid.
Rush Limbaugh made a great point, as he always does, on the radio the other day, and he said the virus itself, as it weakens and states start reopening, the media that have been selling this panic for weeks and weeks and weeks, they have fewer images to sell their hysteria to justify continued lockdowns. But the masks, well, they're kind of a constant reminder. You see the masks and you think you're not safe. You are not back to normal, not even close.
Okay, first of all, anytime someone says Rush Limbaugh made a great point the other day, that's your cue to exit the conversation. That's usually the point on Thanksgiving where you excuse yourself, go to the bathroom and take a hit off your vape pen, or alternatively, you look for your vape pen, realize you forgot it, and frantically search the medicine cabinet for something that'll get you high. Amoxicillin. I had a potato with it. Second, you think people need to see masks to be reminded that things are bad? I assure you, no one needs to be reminded. We can't go to the gym, our mail is soaked in so much Lysol we can barely read the return address, and we've been locked in our houses with our kids for 3 months. I'm so desperate to keep my children entertained, I spent all night making WASP t-shirts, and then we did not 1, not 2, but 3 takes. Now they want to know when their next gig is. My younger one keeps telling me he has an agent now, and given how crazy is, I honestly can't tell if he's joking or not. The point is, mask wearing isn't some liberal media conspiracy. There's evidence to suggest it works. Lots of other countries do it, and the vast majority of Americans agree with it. A new poll out on Wednesday found that 62% of Americans say that deciding to wear a face mask is more of a matter of public health than a matter of personal choice. About 2/3 say they always or mostly wear a face mask or other covering when they're in public and near other people, and 69% say that it's a sign of respectfulness to wear a face mask when in public and near other people. And they're right. It's just common decency. If you know that coughing or breathing on someone could get them sick, you cover your mouth, unless you're Trump, in which case you force everyone to cluster together next to you in a tiny briefing room and repeatedly grab the microphone like the MC at an open mic night. Is anyone here? Is anyone here from out of town? You, sir, in the front room. Front row right there. Yeah, where are you from? I know it's you, Fauci. I know it's you. Okay, can you tell me where you're from so I can burn you a couple times, Fauci? Hey, we only roast the ones we love, and I love you, Fauci. You're my best friend. And despite the fact that the CDC recommends it and most Americans agree with it, Trump again refused to wear a mask today while touring a Ford plant in Michigan after Ford had initially said they would require one. Trump and Vice President Mike Pence have repeatedly refused to wear masks in settings where they were required or where everyone around them was wearing one. Put aside the fact that Trump and Pence are ignoring their own government's guidelines on mask wearing or the stupid conservative culture war over masks, why do you guys have to be such dicks about everything? Just be polite. If you go over to someone's house and they ask you to take your shoes off, you take your shoes off, and then you quietly make a mental note that you're not going to any more of Sharon's game nights. You don't make a big show of leaving them on and tracking mud everywhere, or in Trump's case, toilet paper. There are simple, straightforward things we could have done and could be doing now to suppress the outbreak and safely get back to some semblance of normalcy. Instead, the president and his allies are spending their time trying to subvert the 2020 election. They're concocting wild fantasies about Obama spying or Democrats committing voter fraud. None of that has any basis in reality. Soon, Trump's going to start telling people that if he doesn't get reelected,
You'll have nobody guarding your potatoes.
This has been a Looser Lock. During the COVID crisis, City Harvest has been stepping up to rescue and deliver more food to meet the increased need in New York City. If you're watching this online, you can hit the donate button. Stay safe, wash your hands. We love you.